All right, I'm going to start that all over again because I didn't unmute my mic. So welcome to RVing in New England. Glad to have you with us tonight. Let me bring John up here right away because we got a great program for you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Zagami. Good evening, everyone. And
Petro, how are you?
I'm doing great. You know why? Because it's camping season. And
right.
You know what? What better way to talk about camping season than to be with one of the top people from the world's largest private public campground operations in the entire, actually, when I say world's largest, I mean world's largest. So
they are.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, so it is indeed camping season. The campgrounds are starting to open, and people are able to get out there camping. We're open in Massachusetts. We're open in Maine. Some have quarantine, but for the most part, we're getting people out there and we're getting them camping.
Well, we're getting back somewhat to normal. Who knows? Every week you watch various political, leaders come on TV and give you the state guidelines, and you almost need to have three interpreters say, what did he mean? What did she mean? Does this mean we can go? Does this mean we can't go? Does this mean we have to quarantine? Does this mean we can't go at all? Or is it only for in-state people? Or
yeah, you're right, and they all interpret it a different way. That's for sure.
Well,
it's also a month that is unheralded in terms of May, in terms of our RV dealers and their sales. Every one of our dealers had increased sales this year over last year, and last year they didn't have a pandemic. But we've got dealers. We got some dealers that are doing that did in May 100% more business than they did in May of last year. I think almost all of our dealers from the January to May timeframe between 2019 and 2020. 2020 is actually going to be equal to or surpass what they did in 2019. They are literally flying off the shelves,
which is absolutely amazing when you consider the stuff like Winnebago, for example. We were with them on March 9th and 10th, 11th, whatever it was. And then their stock tanked, down 40%. And then 2 weeks ago, and I hope I'm not too late to buy it, it's back higher than what it was.
You are.
Am I?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
it'll come back again.
Anyway.
Well, tell them about our guest.
So we have
while you do that, I'm going to bring up the logo and bring up Whitney.
You want me to bring up the guest too?
Yeah, I think I'll bring up our guest.
Okay, let's bring up our guest.
Let's do that. 3, 2, 1.
Bob's such a technical wizard, folks.
Well, yeah, but the alternative is that I have to make you the technical wizard. And that's even worse.
An alternative. That is.
Right. That's not an option. So, Whitney, how are you? And welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, guys, and thanks. Everyone's in yellow, which is awesome.
Time out, Tagami.
You noticed that we changed our shirts from the promo and from the testing beforehand?
Yeah.
Do we have the right color?
Actually, I'm more yellow than you are, so you got to get yourself a new lamp or something. So, but let's ask the judge. Seeing that everything you do at KOA is yellow, Whitney, who amongst us, and we're both wearing the same shirt, but who has the best lighting and the best ambiance for our yellow shirts?
You're definitely glowing somehow there, Bob.
You should see him about 5 minutes of 8 if you think he's glowing now.
No, I think any yellow gets 2 thumbs up for me.
Okay. But hold on.
She's being diplomatic, John. She just doesn't want to make you feel bad.
But Whitney, I went one step further. I painted our walls yellow for the show tonight.
Just for the show. I'm touched, John. Really touched.
Okay.
He's amazing. Yeah.
That's a good gesture there. I appreciate that.
Okay. Time out. You said, DePietro, introduce our guest.
Well, you weren't quick enough.
Well, then you took her up and then you started talking about your shirt and stuff like we still haven't said who she is. Now, do you want me to do that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, our special guest tonight is the Vice President of Marketing for KOA, the world's largest private but public, in other words, not state-run campground association. And one of the things that we wanted, and her name is Whitney Scott.
Oh, I'm glad you told us who she was.
And she is somewhere in Montana. We don't know where. Are you in the office? You in Billings?
I came into the office. Yes, I'm in Billings.
Okay. But New Englanders, here's the good part about Whitney. She went to school in New England, right in Boston, at Boston University. So she's a terrier, and go Terriers, and
Go Terriers.
Go KOA. So Whitney, we want to thank you so much for taking time from your busy schedule to be with us. And you can talk about anything you want, because Bob and I we're just gonna read the comments from our guests over here, and you can pretty much host the show. If you like.
Well, let me do that and let Whitney know the scope of what we've got. Sandy Ellingson is on from the RV Women's Alliance. Jerry Plant from Majors RV in Cape Cod. Walter Swenson, who may yet be again the Mass State Director with Good Sam, because they paused all of them, but there's a rumor out that they may come back. Jerry says, everyone going camping, if someone hassles you, just call it a protest. All right, Jerry, no political stuff, Jerry.
Right.
Joe Moniz from Rolling on TV. Mark Polk says, good evening, gents. Don Polk, hello, Bob, John, and Whitney. John, you noticed. Don Polk says, hello, Bob, John, and Whitney.
Right.
You're in trouble, Don.
No. That was age appropriate.
Yeah. And Mark says KOA yellow tonight. I'm glad you picked up on that, Mark. Hi, Maria. Glad you could be there. Chris Andro from Hemlock Hill RV. He was the guest a few weeks back. And
good
I
luck
on your numbers, Chris, but you knocked it out of the park, that's for sure. He says we're looking good in yellow. He probably means Whitney's looking good in yellow. We're trying yellow out. And Nick Wright from Unlimited RV in Connecticut, also one of our RV dealers. What would you like to talk about, Whitney?
Well, I think that there's a lot to talk about. Camping, to your point, has started again, which is very exciting. We're really excited at KOA. So anything about camping, where we've gone, where we've come from,
okay.
I'm open to it.
I got a question for you, Whitney. So we'll talk about the COVID stuff and the coronavirus stuff and the impact on the business, et cetera, et cetera. But I think it's very important to point out, and you guys are certainly the leaders in this, is that it's not just RVing, it's really camping. And I found out in the last few years since I've been RVing is that KOA offers a number of different alternatives to those that don't own an RV but still want to camp. You want to discuss some of those?
Yeah, definitely. So at KOAs across the system, we have we always have tent sites, we have RV sites, and then we also have accommodations, whether those be camping cabins, deluxe cabins, and definitely we have a lot of unique accommodations, which could be anything from Costoga wagons to yurts to tree houses. So pretty much for anyone interested in a camping experience, there should be a KOA that can accommodate what they're looking to do.
Well, and I want to assure the audience, because they know we don't script this stuff, but you noticed as you talked about that, how easy that photograph and just happened to come up with all of those types of camping styles that you have. That was just my good production on the lower level, and I just happened to have that particular picture. But you're right. You've got a little bit of everything.
Right.
Let me
Go ahead.
Because from a New England standpoint, one of the things that's not on there quite yet is a little venture that you've got going up in Bar Harbor. Would you like to talk about that? Tell us where it is and where it is on your schedule these days.
Yeah, tell us more.
Yes.
So tell us more about Terramore. John, that's a bad joke, John. Thank God. Oh.
So this year we are going to be opening a new vertical, a new venture for us. It's not under the KOA umbrella of brands. It's a brand all by itself called Terramore, which in Latin is love of land. And it's only a glamping, or what we're calling an outdoor resort, which is only glamping tents. We've seen a lot of entrants into the glamping market. We've played there from a KOA perspective. And what we really wanted to see is this something from a campground perspective that we can build and do a better job creating an outdoor experience as well as that indoor experience, and really harness a lot of that glamping interest. And make us very high-end experience. It's right in beautiful Bar Harbor, Maine. And we've definitely had some delays with what's been going on, but we're hoping to open here in August.
Oh, okay.
It's a great area in Maine. I always say Maine is one of the best kept secrets in America when it comes to travel, because people who haven't been there listen to us talk all about it all the time, and then once they go, then they always want to go back.
Well, Whitney, we have to give you a little bit of a not a glamour lesson, a grammar lesson, because here it's called Bahaba. There's no R's in New England. So for future use, when you're out there in Billings and talking and say, hey, I talked to the people in Bahaba, they're going to look at you and say, what's going on? And you say, look, I speak the proper diction for that particular geographic area. So my follow-up question to you on that is this. Obviously, there was, March and April and May, and of course, since you operate, all over North America, you didn't lose as much in certain areas as you would have in New England, which couldn't open. But now that the floodgates are opening, based upon what we're hearing from our campgrounds up here, as well as our RV dealers up here, and I know a lot of our people on the right column are going to say, I can't find a reservation. How is KOA dealing with all of a sudden, the rush that would normally be over 6 months now condensed to 3 months?
Yeah, it has been a surge for sure. Especially with certain states opening, there's just a floodgate of people that are interested in booking. The wonderful thing, and the reason why a lot of the sites have become unavailable, were because people that had plans, instead of canceling them, they postponed them to a future date. So that reservation just kept moving along, where others may have canceled and just said, oh, I'll wait till everything's over. So one of the things that we're doing is trying to steer people into open campgrounds. Also times of the day or times of the week and different months that may have more openings and vacancies. Midweek business, especially with kids out of school. There's a lot more ability to, go on a Tuesday and things like that. It doesn't always have to be that Friday and Saturday. And, there's a lot more flexibility during this time with work. So we're hoping to help people find places and times that they can go out and really enjoy the great outdoors.
That's a great point. Yeah. And two things that brings to mind. One, with everybody working at home now, all of a sudden people have discovered technology that they never used before. So a lot of companies realize people are actually more productive in some cases working at home, but they're also using technology in a different way than, just look at Zoom and the way that we conduct our meetings now. But you also, over the last couple of years, made significant investments in your app. So I'd like you to talk a little bit about that, because that's where the next generation, that's where the millennials go to get there. Not us old guys. Walter still uses a paper map and a paper direct. Walter's on. So he says he stayed at 18 different KOAs around the country, and I think we have 50,000 KOA points for more camping. Jerry Plant says, wondering how the KOA Journey Holiday Resorts branding is working. All right, I'll save that question, but talk to us a little bit about your software development.
Yeah, definitely. So over the past couple of years, one of the things that we've noticed is our sessions on KOA.com are moving more to mobile, and then they are to desktop. So we see it all the time. People are addicted to their phones. So what we really needed to do was invest some time and energy into the app to make the experience of booking and finding a KOA as seamless as it can be on a desktop. So we've invested a lot of work and time into making the KOA app really seamless. It knows where you are and can help you find the nearest KOA. You can look at your value card points. So if you have 50,000 points, you can see them right there at the app. You can have, your upcoming reservations, everything that you need that you can find on the regular website, you can find in the app. And actually, we're going to be upgrading the app over the summer. So even the great experience you have now will actually improve over this next year.
And you're going to do it during the summer, the peak of your busy season? You're a brave lady.
Let me
I've got a great
follow up on what you said with seeing the move to mobile from desktop, laptop, the other stuff, tablet, etc. How are you finding that is changing the timing of the reservation? In other words, are people reserving when they're outside your door, or are they reserving still a month in advance, or are they reserving last minute?
That's a great question.
Whitney,
there's many different answers.
Whitney, don't tell him he's asking great questions. His ego will get in the way.
Don't want to get his ego too big.
Yeah.
So even though it's not a great question, no, I'm just joking. So the booking windows are really more geared to what kind of campground it is. So there was a question about Journey Holidays and Resorts.
Yep.
A more roadside campground might have a booking window of about a week because people are on the road. They don't know when they're going to get there. It could be even as small as a couple of days or a couple of hours. Where more of your resort style KOAs will have booking windows that can be a year or 6 months. The majority of their reservations are made. So the app and the flow of reservations really hasn't changed from a booking window perspective. What we have seen is that people like to do a lot of research on the app and on their phone, but they actually, when they are ready to book, a lot of people still want to sit down in front of a computer and book through the desktop. So we have a lot of sessions through mobile devices, and we still have the majority of reservations through a desktop design.
That's interesting.
That's interesting.
Very interesting. So Walter said, what was it, Chris? Bob, do you want to go through these? Sandy says she loves going to KOA because of allowing tenting. How big is tenting?
Tenting is the biggest demographic of campers nationwide, both in the US and Canada. In KOA's business, we're mostly RVing, but we always have tent sites available. With our branding work through Journey Holidays and Resorts, we also make sure that we have what we call a premium tent site, which allows the camper also to have like a level designated pad, water, electricity, just making sure that that experience is a little more upgraded for those tenters. It's definitely the entry point to camping. So if we can make a tenter's experience special, we feel like as they progress through different types of camping, they'll stay with KOA.
Well, that's very interesting because when you look around, and John and I, I've been RVing for 40 years, and John's been out there about 30 years.
20, I'm not that old.
Most campgrounds that offer tents, it's like the site of last resort. They're not level. They're horrible. They're in grassy fields. There's no love for the tenters. But that's a great marketing. Obviously, that's your job. But that's a great way to get them to appreciate the whole campground experience because they're going to be with people who are on premium sites with an RV or a pop-up trailer or a fifth wheel.
But let's
treat them equally.
Topic. Let's take that topic. Well, along with what you're saying, I'm not interrupting. I'm following, even though it sounds like I'm interrupting. But I guess in reality, I did. But Whitney, with the tenting, that usually requires the use of the facilities, the bathroom facilities, whether it's shower, toilet, sink, etc. Is that being impacted by the areas that make the like in New England, they can't open the bathrooms. So what does the tenter do?
Right. It's a very good question and one we've definitely put a lot of thought.
There you go again.
Bob, it's a given that I ask good questions.
Sorry. I won't.
Forget him. Forget him. Just make believe it's just me and you. This is the Whitney and John KOA hour, folks. Thank you for joining.
So some of our campgrounds have asked RVers when they're on the campground, since they have a self-contained unit, to please use the bathroom at their unit, so that the bathrooms are only reserved for camping cabins and tenters. And then we've had some campgrounds that put tape over the door so they know if it's been used, so that they can go in and clean it when that tape is broken. And then we even have other campgrounds that have lock codes on the campground or on the bathroom, and they actually assign a code to each tenter, and that's their bathroom, so that it becomes a single-use bathroom.
Wow,
that's interesting.
Very interesting.
Very interesting, because I think one of the things that people like about KOA is it's kind of like McDonald's. You know what you're getting. There's a standard that you're going to meet or exceed. And let's face it, there are some very rustic campgrounds in the United States. Some people love them because they don't want running water. They don't want to they want to get away from it all. But there are some bathrooms that are pretty, you know what I mean?
Yeah, you don't use them. So Don Polk says they are headed out to your new KOA Outer Banks West Currituck Sound?
Currituck.
The end of June. You want to tell her a little bit about the campground? She hasn't been there. She has another favorite one on the Outer Banks, but she couldn't get a reservation with me. I don't know why she didn't pick up the phone and call you, but
I know, and I know the Polks. They can just call me. No, the Outer Currituck Sound is it's their first year in operation. The same owner has a couple of other KOAs. They're great. I know they must be talking about Cape Hatteras, which is right on the ocean, which is also a great location.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's booking up really fast, so it would make sense. But Currituck Sound's going to be an amazing experience as well. And Don and Mark, you better tell me if it's not.
Okay, now let me ask you a question. In your camp stores, where you have all your food and your milk and all the things that people like to buy when they're in the campground, do you have a special section just for vegetables? Because Dawn's a vegetarian, and she only does, Mark puts the steak on the, I don't know if you knew that, but Mark puts the steak on the grill, and he takes care of his manly eating, requirements. But Dawn's going to want a store full of vegetables, so she'll have to bring them with her.
Well, I know that every KOA has to have a can of beans, so those are vegetarian. But I'm not quite sure that every KOA has.
If they have pork and beans or bacon bits in them, those are the only way they're.
Would they also have a can of Chef Boyardee on the
probably
on the shelf? Because even though John is Italian in name only, he's got a real bad habit, and his shelves are stocked with stuff like Chef Boyardee, little spaghetti rings, or raviolis. The guy's Italian with it. Now, you went to school in Boston, so you went to the North End. John DePietro is not allowed to go into the North End, because when they see him coming, they just tell him he's got to go back home and get himself another can of Chef Boyardee. So when I go out to eat, I don't take him with me in the North End. A little bit lower. There you go. What is it tonight? Spaghetti and meatballs. There's no hope.
But
there's no hope for the guy, Whitney. Oh, B&M baked beans. Well, yeah, of course. That's they came from Maine. That's where they're made. They're made up in Portland, Maine. All right. Sandy Ellington says that's one of the reasons I love KOA, because they allow tenting. Mark Polk says we always stay at KOA. That's a new slogan for you, Whitney. We always stay at KOA.
With the always.
Did you do that, Mark, just to impress her with your marketing skills? We always stay at KOA. Sandy says we camped 5,000 miles in a tent at all KOAs last year. Wow.
Doesn't she have a diesel pusher?
Yeah, she's got a diesel pusher. She just got it. Chris Andrews says Hemlock Hill always recommends KOA to their new RV buyers, and it's also a great partner of Route 66 because Hemlock Hill is a Route 66 dealer. Walter says heading to the Delaware Water Gap KOA in July for vacation. Valerie Taylor, welcome back, Valerie. Looking forward to using this app. Okay, it'll be good. And Audrey has come. Now, you know something? Rick Kessler told me he was going to be on at the crack of the show, at the start of the show. He's always 20 to 30 minutes in the show. So, oh, there he is. He just showed up. Forget it. Okay, thank you, Rick. Audrey Egan says, we got reservations at the Cape Charles Chesapeake KOA at the end of the month. The website looked like sites were not available for us, 2 rigs, but a phone call proved that not the case. Good. Dig a hole.
What? Let me stop.
What does Andrew mean by that?
Hold on. That was what I'm talking about with the bathroom wasn't available. That's what Chris said.
Oh, okay.
Okay. However, Whitney, Audrey brings up a good point that many times people go to the website and for some reason or another, it says there's nothing available or not the size you want, whatever. Do you always suggest that if they're very serious, just to call, just to verify that something, I mean, they could have got a last minute cancellation that hasn't even hit the system yet, right?
Yes, for sure. We actually have tried to put into KOA.com that when you get a no availability notice, that it actually prompts you to call the campground just in case. Because the other thing is booking a hotel is very different than booking a campsite. You don't have to think about slide outs and length, and if you're towing something, all those things may make a site unavailable based on how it's set up on the back end. And our system necessarily doesn't know, well, if I switch that site and that site, I can get you in here because they can actually fit over here. Yeah. And so sometimes if you don't have availability, it could just be a little human movement on the back end that we could get a rig in. There's just so many more attributes to booking a campsite for an RV than any other type of booking out there.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and that's a good point. Because you've got circumstances that people switch at the last minute. They might have got stuck in traffic and they call and it hasn't gotten through the system yet. But the other thing is, if you're, a frequent flyer, if you will, with KOA, maybe there's an opportunity for them to give you a little bit of priority, in rebooking or unbooking or whatever.
Yeah, definitely. Our VIPs, which is a upper echelon of our value card rewards campers, we don't charge them a cancellation fee. We're looking at other ways to give our rewards members some of that prioritization. I do know that a lot of campgrounds also, if you're a value card member, and there's an open patio site, sometimes they upgrade you to that patio site. So there's a lot of that, but definitely, to your point too, we also see campers that when they're traveling long distances might book a few KOAs along the way because they don't know if they're going to stop in 4, 6, or 8 hours. Yeah. And so then they don't show up and there's availability that we just don't know we have.
Mm. So my other question to you is this. When you generally when you say chain, okay, and you're not really a chain, you're a group of individually owned campgrounds. And I think that's important to point out that all the money doesn't funnel back to Billings, Montana. These are locally owned businesses that have basically a reservation system and a SOP system. How do you sell the positive and negatives of having a national name?
Well, there's definitely positives and negatives for sure. I think so. We're a franchise organization. To your point, everything is 500 of our campgrounds are individually owned and operated by people in our own communities. And I think just like many franchises, we come with it's hard. You've got an entrepreneurial spirit, but we have such a great brand, and we have such great training around that brand that it really becomes a seamless process. It's really a system of support. This is how we greet guests. This is the shirt we wear. And we make it so simple for the franchisee that I think that it just naturally kind of happens that it almost becomes a support system more than a rule book, if you will.
Okay. Because again, in order to to have the logo and the yellow shirt, you've got to have standards that are over and above what another locally owned property that might be right down the street has.
Exactly.
Do your thing for 15 seconds.
Okay, so folks, what we want to do is thank our listeners and viewers that are here right now, joining us in our live audience. And we want to ask that you do the same thing that you do every week, which allows us to reach 7 to 10 to 15,000 viewers each week with each show. And that's to look at the button that's on your screen that says share, hit that button. Send it to somebody who's already RVing, send it to somebody who's thinking of RVing, and even send it to somebody, as we're finding out this year through a Wall Street Journal story, send it to somebody who never in the world thought that they would be RVing and camping, but this year, because of current events, are looking at camping very seriously and buying faster than the manufacturers can keep up with. So with that being said, thank you for watching, and please share.
Okay, so I lost my picture of the cabins, so let me do this.
Okay, I'll take over with something intelligent. Working the grid, always ask if you can do that. What's that mean, Sandy? Working the grid. And I can't believe that a lady who travels in a 45-foot diesel pusher motorhome sleeps in a tent. But, hey, that's what Jerry Plant says. If you want to know how the branding works, stay at a KOA that just converted over. We stayed the first week at the Chickateague. Okay, that's somewhere I think in Maryland, right? The shore.
I think it's in Virginia.
In the Eastern Shore there, right? Okay, and it was very positive. Okay, so he must have been there before when it wasn't. So, and Susan Carpenter from RVWA is a little bit late, but she's in another time zone. So we'll give her, we don't, by the way, if you notice, we don't give Kessler from RV Business any leeway at all because we've been doing the show for almost 3 years. He should know when we're on.
He has trouble telling time in Michigan.
Work the grid. It's finding a site when the system says there are none. Okay. So
Susan Carpenter says she's from RVWA, has said she stays at a lot.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. So
cabins.
Yeah. Let's talk a little, because I don't know if it's still the case, but I know the past few years cabins were one of the fastest growing sections of KOA, and I think they blend. They even have a better story to tell now, because just think of the number of people who are buying RVs that are going to go out camping. And they're going to like it so much, they're going to say to their friends, you really ought to come with us. And you can rent a cabin. I'm going to go to KOA and get my patio site with my deluxe grill and my swing and my Weber grill, and, all the things that I want. But you can rent a cabin and be in the same campground, and our kids can play together. So I won't steal your thunder on that, but what's your take on that? Am I off base?
Nope. It's a great way to get, as we talked about before, a multitude of people able to get outdoors. To your point, RVers will go out and their friends want to come in with, but if they don't have beds, for instance, a cabin is a great way for them to come along. We see a lot of dual use or even triple use where you got a tenter, a cabin, and an RVer together.
Yep.
I would also say that we've done a lot of research within our own data. And what we've seen at some parks, our traditional cabin camper that has maybe stayed in a deluxe cabin for the last 3 years or so on a park, all of a sudden pops up again in an RV. And what we see this is because they really like getting outdoors. They didn't invest in an RV because that's a big investment. And they see all these people, year after year, and they're saying, I'm spending $200 a night staying at this deluxe cabin. I want to do this more often. Maybe we should just invest in an RV. So we actually see some turnover from the cabin customer into the RV customer. So I think that's a really positive story on why it's nice to have kind of all three types of camping on one.
That way. You keep the business that way.
Yeah.
Now, if you notice, when Whitney began answering your question, Bob, she didn't preface it by saying that's a great question.
Well, I didn't.
It was kind of a mediocre question.
I picked up on that, John, and I didn't want to interrupt her, but she broke my heart. She opens up with your questions that you asked me.
Because she's on it.
And you're so brilliant, and you're the better-looking guy in the show, and I ask a really good question, and she just goes right into answering it.
Okay, so, Whitney, I'll follow up with an intelligent question that takes some thought, and I just forgot what it was.
That's not a good question.
It was a good question. It was a good.
How can you say that when you can't remember?
Oh, it was one of these.
When you can't remember what it was.
Cabins. It happens every week. I have a great question lined up, and then I wait for the.
What do you think of it? And he does come back to it, Whitney. His brain kind of recycles around, and he comes back to it. But one thing I want to talk about, I think it's one of the most impressive things that KOA does, and I know Toby addresses the RV Power Breakfast every year, and we go back far enough with Jim Rogers when he introduced some of this stuff, and we've had a great relationship with KOA. It's certainly one of our favorites. But you spend a lot of money.
I got it.
Developing. Well, then you hold it. Then you just hold it.
Okay.
So developing the North American Camping Report, and we had Scott Bair on, I think 3 weeks ago, and it was incredible the mindset that goes into that and the amount of information that comes out of that. But it's a KOA product, branded KOA. It's got all kinds of information. I mean, number one, if I own an RV dealership, I'm going to make my salespeople and service people and anybody in the dealership
memorize that.
Read the North American Camping Report, because that's their customer. That's the customer that's going to buy the next RV or the next trailer. So that's the RV side of it. If I'm a campground, you're giving me all the information that I need to gauge where I am on the scale. So KOA's at the top, fine. But you're not saying I want this all for myself. I want the industry to improve. And that was always Jim Rogers. He brought that with him from the hospitality industry. Toby does the same thing, saying, okay, so we've done this, but we want to rise everybody up. And the fact that you give that away, you publish it, you give presentations on it. I just think from a business, I never saw it in my document imaging career. They weren't going to, Kodak wasn't going to tell 3M what they're doing, and 3M wasn't going to tell Bell and Howell, and they certainly weren't going to tell us independent service providers. But talk about that a little bit, John. I hope that was
a lecture.
What's that?
You can ask her a question or just give a lecture.
I'm done.
You are.
No, yeah, it's wonderful entry into the North American Camper Report, Bob. Wonderful, absolutely superb. Yes, so we do North American Camping Report every year, and I think the data does us all as an industry a really important job. We all have a very symbiotic relationship. If someone buys an RV, hopefully they go camping, and they go camping at a campground, and the manufacturers need the data because they need to understand how to build them and who's buying them and things like that. So from a perspective of sharing, I think our philosophy is that, to your point, by sharing it, we all do better, and we can all market better, and hopefully get more campers into RVs, into tents, into cabins, and into campgrounds. So North American Camper Report this year, we were all ready to tee it up and to go out with it in April.
Yep.
Pandemic hit, and it's no longer relevant because year-over-year data didn't really look at what was happening now. No one was camping in April or getting out there. So what we did is we took a step back and we said, so do we just trash it for a year and pick it up next year? what do we do? And so what we decided was to redo the report, brought in Scott, our brilliant researcher, and said, we're going to spend the money, redo the report, and come out with what camping looks like as things start opening up again. And the whole report is the change that has happened from the pandemic and from COVID-19 and how it looks as things open up. And I think right now we're actually seeing the data come to life, which is really exciting.
It is amazing.
So,
do you remember your question, John?
I do. But at the end of April, we had Scott on the show, sitting in your seat, and he said, "Look, we were all set to go, and then all of a sudden we had to put the brakes on and basically start over again." And now it's out and ready to go. But interestingly, and again, Bob and I don't know what each of us have written down to talk to you about. But my question was this. I said in my mind before I forgot what I said, you folks spend a lot of money on market research. And when you're in the marketing department, a lot of your budget is not just advertising and PR, it is research. So since we have some of the smartest minds in camping that are joining us now on this show, we will give you the opportunity to ask these people any question that you might want to ask that wasn't included in the camping report, or you've just come up with, now that post-COVID is allegedly here, what question would you want to know from the people that are on this, that will be viewing this show and are viewing it now? And no charge for this.
Man, that's a tough. You should have given that to me like an hour ago, so I could have thought about it.
I didn't think of it.
I told you we don't script this stuff. We just press the button and talk and see what comes out.
But we get better as the show goes on.
Obviously.
Okay, you can think about it.
Yes, I think I will kerchunk on it, but I would say, as things are opening up, what are you hearing on the ground? I mean, what we're seeing is large sets of data that is all hypothetical, because when we did it, it was still late April. Everyone was still at home. So, are people, is the buying time a little bit longer? We know that people are buying, but is it taking them a longer time to make a decision, or is it really quick that people are jumping into RVs, they just pick one and go? Or do they need their handhelds, a lot more hand holding through the situation?
Well, I'm gonna ask Audrey Foley Egan to jump in on that one, because she just said to me, way to put her on the spot, John. I wasn't trying to put her on the spot by any means, but when you do market research and you people that answer an X question, and one answers a 1 and one answers a 10, you're going to get 5 as what the answer is. But there was never a 5. Okay, I mean, it was either a very good or a very bad. But because of the way they average and median and all that other stuff, you're going to get an answer that never even came. These guys here that are watching the show, and Audrey, tell us what your response was when you tried to get reservations at some of the places that you had. I mean, these are actual people that will tell you. While
she types that, I want to show you how astute Mr. Kessler is. Did I hit it?
Okay.
You didn't come
what are you doing?
Go. Come on.
Oh, Whitney, please don't feed the bears. It will only make them.
Yeah. There we go.
We're talking about Scott Baer.
Thanks, Sandy.
Oh, thanks, Sandy. That's because she's right below that Kessler comment, and I have no idea why.
I mean, this is too crazy.
This is too technical.
In new education. However, when I was at another dealer last week, Bob, when we went over there to do a shoot for something, the sales manager came out and said, people are buying faster. They're not asking a lot of questions, and they're finding out that if they don't buy now, they're going to have to wait till the middle or end of July to get the unit that they wanted. So,
All right, let me
Yeah.
it doesn't mean they don't need information. It means they're buying quicker.
Yeah, I mean, the report showed that we saw an increase of about 17% in RVing itself. And, I think it naturally lends itself to why you have a self-quarantine unit, the unit's outdoors. It makes a ton of sense why people are so interested in RVing. And then coupled with the fact that no one wants to go travel on an airplane and they're, whether or not it's safe or they can come back. I think it lends itself really well to what we're seeing in campgrounds and camping.
Well, we saw that statistic that said only 14% of people are comfortable flying on a domestic flight. 14% domestically. Imagine what it is internationally for those people that would be, going to Caribbean islands, which are now shut down. I mean, like Grand Cayman is not even allowing cruise ships to come there for a year or two.
Yeah.
But did you see Chris's question, Bob?
Yeah, I'm gonna go down. There's three that I want to go. So Scott Bear says, "Good evening, Scott." And Scott, the restaurants are open in Portland now for outside dining. So even though I'm not allowed to go up to my resort yet, and I expect to be in a couple of weeks, I will come up any day that you want to come down to Portland and we can have that long-awaited lunch. Scott and I try to get together for lunch every now and then. He's got a question. Are we seeing an influx of newbies? And if so, how are you people dealing with that? Let's do two parts of that. I'll answer the first part and then I'll let you get the second part. We are definitely seeing an influx. We have people walking into dealerships, buying sight unseen, buying over the phone. We had one of our dealers had a customer walk in that his mother was in Florida. He wanted to drive her back and never had an RV, never been camping. So he said this year he's going to buy a motorhome and go down to Florida. His kids heard about it, liked the idea. He wrote the dealer a check on the spot for $300,000 and bought 2 motorhomes because he wanted the kids to be able to come along on the trip. That's the kind of stuff we're seeing. So how are you dealing with that? Because, we already had an issue in the industry about not enough campground space. And I don't necessarily buy into that. That's in very populated areas. Yeah, it's like trying to get a hotel in Las Vegas. But there is a concern that now with all these new people, how does the industry handle it? Not just KOA.
Yeah. Well, from KOA's perspective, a couple of things where, we try, just like an RV dealership would be, to educate, to put out information about campground etiquette. We use Mark Polk to talk about, how to level your RV, gray water, black water. I think the more we can, and what we've done from a marketing perspective is say, okay, this customer has watched or read this article or video. Maybe they would also like this, and try to, give, just like Amazon feeds you information based on what we see them do. We can also say, okay, you're an RVer. It looks like you're looking at beginning stuff. Potentially you'd be interested in this. From a campground availability perspective, which, to your point, we've been asked about before, we are greatly encouraging our campgrounds to look at their campgrounds from a overall site perspective and say, what are you doing with that extra 10 acres, or how can we build in more sites here? We have a whole development team whose entire focus over the last year and a half has been really focused on helping campgrounds build out more sites, just to maximize capacity and open more spots in high demand areas.
Okay, so Chris Andro says what we're seeing is a lot of new buyers who need more education. Speaking about education, our guest next week just happens to be Mark and Don Polk coming back on the show. We haven't had them on for a while.
Right.
Audrey says if you're in New England, it's tough getting spots. She says, I found KOAs to be extremely responsive. We're going south for vacation this year. And Don says, we know there are newbies entering this market because our online RV walkthrough courses are selling like crazy. And Walter Swenson says, I see in the forums a lot of confusion about where they can go camping
quarantines out of
quarantines out of state and what have you. And that's in flux, and that happens a lot. You want to talk about that at all?
Quarantine?
Well, I don't know what more we can say on that, Walter.
Yeah, but she can't memorize 50 states.
Yeah, it's every state. And Arvik's got a site that has all that.
On that one, Whitney.
I know even in New England, I have trouble keeping track of it in New England for our dealers, just with these.
We've definitely, from a mass perspective, from an administrative perspective, are following it as closely as possible, working with Arvik, but from a campground perspective, and especially to campers, we actually have for our campers, we developed it during this time on KOA.com. There's actually a COVID box on their KOA landing page that actually explains what the campground is doing or what travelers need to do to help them understand what the campground, how the operational items have changed on the campground. For instance, like if you're going to Maine right now, if I went to Maine, I'd have to quarantine for 2 weeks. So these are things that we're trying to actively get the campgrounds to help us communicate to the camper, because the campground knows most likely more than we do on what regulations they need to have.
That's a good point.
You know, another thing with the quarantine thing is we were in Maine 2 weeks ago, and there's signs, you know, those flashing signs on the highway, you must quarantine. The reality is there's no enforcement of it. So,
and then the next one that flashes up, they're so welcoming in Maine, and we have a lot of issues with the governor up there. After you see the 14-day quarantine, the next sign says, please stay home. This is a state that depends on tourism.
Maine, it used to be called Vacation Land. Well, their license plates still say Maine Vacation Land.
Right.
Just don't vacation in Maine.
I put up that little chart there to show that we have to help you out, Whitney, because you got 500 campgrounds and we got less than 20 in New England. Connecticut's got 2. Maine's got 9. Massachusetts got 2. New Hampshire's got 5. Rhode Island. I left Vermont off. Vermont, unless it's slower on this thing.
Well,
Vermont's got 2 also.
I don't think there is in Rhode Island.
What can we do to help you get more KOAs in New England?
Send them to our sales team. You see a campground that you think should be a KOA, and help us send them to our sales team. I'm sure we could definitely use a few more, and they would definitely know how to convince people why KOA is the right way to go.
So, Whitney, let me ask you this very important question. As marketing director, I'm sure you stayed in your own KOAs to kind of get the experience, right? Okay. Between you and me, do you go on the bounce pillow?
I do.
Okay. You got to admit, that is fun. I don't care how old you are.
It's a workout. Right. It's hard.
Especially when you fall and you can't get up and you roll to the ground. But the reason that I brought that question up is 3-4 years ago, we were down at a property in North Stonington, Connecticut, that was right near New London, Connecticut, which has Amtrak service from New York City. And it was a Saturday morning or Sunday morning, and I'm watching my grandkids bounce all over that pillow. And the person next to me, the adult next to me, we just struck up a conversation with my wife and her. And I said, what are you traveling in? She said, we live in Manhattan, and we jumped on the Amtrak train, and we're here in 3 hours on Friday afternoon. We stay Friday night and Saturday night, go back on Sunday. But the campground picks them up in New London at the train station, brings them to a cabin. And she said, because we live in New York City, where she didn't grow up, she said, I love this opportunity that I don't have to have an RV in order to go camping. So there's got to be several of those stories near metro areas.
Definitely. Our Boston Cape Cod, you can take the commuter rail. The end of the line is it just like right there. It's a less than a 3-minute drive, and we'll shuttle.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. Frank asked about a camping spot in Cape Cod, has the idea that some don't want folks to cross the bridges considering bringing the COVID-19 problem subsided by now. There's probably a different answer to that question.
It's not even an issue. People have moved beyond that. I saw a note from Jose Moniz earlier. He was complaining about the illumination of our shirts on the screen. But now, that brings up a good point, because Michelle Fontaine has not joined us tonight, but Michelle is en route from Arizona to Massachusetts and staying at KOAs every night along the way, and she's bringing her mother along with her, and she's been posting, and she's having a couple of challenges, but she's working it out. It's just her and Mom, and they're on their way. I think they were going to Amarillo today, so she must have had a tired day, because she likes to.
That's right. Yeah, she said last night Amarillo by morning.
I did that. I sent her the George Strait song. She said Amarillo. I sent her the song after.
Yeah. Hey, Maria stayed in Middleborough, and they have a bounce pillow at Middleborough.
They do.
Yep. And we knew the manager there. The manager that was there also used to run Connecticut too, Jerry. But I think he's retired.
We haven't met the new manager yet, but he's very good friends with Eric and Brittany Highland from RV Wanderlust, who we had on the show probably around the middle of last year. And then after they were here in this area, they stopped down there to see their friends. So there was a history there. Jim Turntine, sales can only happen so fast, right? Meaning there is only so much that the existing dealers can handle. It will go on for a while. Well, you're right. I mean, some of our dealers, are really stretched. I had one dealer last week that was delivering 14 units on Saturday, and in order to get them ready, his service department literally worked 16-hour days for like 3 days before that. So yeah, there's some things that you can do that. Ed Laturco, nice to see you here, Ed. I saw you earlier, but I didn't get a chance to recognize you. Once an RVer, what percentage? Oh, he actually had a good question, and he needs a little TLC, Whitney. So tell him this is a great question. Once an RVer, what percentage become true RVers versus those travel the U.S. and call it quits? I don't know if you can answer that. Do you have stats on that? When he says become true RVers, I think he means full timers.
Full-time RVers, yeah.
I don't think we have a stat regarding that. I think that's actually a really interesting research opportunity, brain thinking, but definitely not something we've looked at is, what percentage of of RVers that are just short-term RVers right now turn into full-timers. We're rebuilding our system right now. I think once we can really understand the lifetime of a camper, so we can watch them change vehicles, change how they travel, then we could probably have more of that data. It would be a really interesting percentage to have, but I don't know. You stumped me.
Scott's on it.
Scott's on it.
You gotta be careful. One thing, this might be billable time.
Yeah. He just that check. Now we believe it or not, we're at 8:00, and we try to end at 8 because these people are wonderful, giving us an hour of their time. But I do have to put in one of Jerry's smart aleck answers. He says, "There's Jerry Plant." He says, "I was surprised to see a KOA in PIE. I thought it was KOA." Huh?
Prince Edward Island.
Prince Edward Island. I know what it is.
Yeah, I know, but you said PIE. That's pie.
Oh, I said PIE. I'm sorry. Yeah. I thought it would be a KOC.
Kampgrounds of Canada.
Kampgrounds of Canada.
All right, Jerry, you can go to bed now. And we are literally at the end of the show. Don, I'll give Don the last one. Great to see you, Whitney.
Say about the shirt.
And John, I was just kidding about your shirt. Don't make him. She got to
find out what she's
your feelings. Whitney, I want to thank you very much for joining. I hope you'll come back. I hope it was fun for you, and we always enjoy working with the KOA folks. But what would you like to say to our fans? Your fans in New England? They were our fans, but now they're your fans. So what would you like to say to them?
Well, I love New England. Go BU, go Sox, go Patriots. Sorry, we're all really devastated about the quarterback. But no, I love you from
what quarterback? What quarterback? Was there a problem with the quarterback?
No, we love you guys. I really appreciate the support and for having me on and in yellow shirts. That could not have made my day any brighter. Literally.
That's my idea.
One thing we do ask Whitney, if you have some time tonight or tomorrow, maybe, if you would go back through the comments, because we didn't get to everybody's comments, and if there are comments that you would like to specifically, or maybe have somebody go through them, but give them maybe better answers than what we were able to do. And John and I do that also. But John, would you do that? Thank you.
We're looking forward to stopping at a bunch of KOAs when we do the Winnebago tour, and we'll fill out all that paperwork and make it happen. And we'll have to put the Winnebago logo on the other.
On the other patch, yeah.
Exactly, another patch.
Yeah. So I mean, you know what? We're going to get an email after the show from Dwayne Cyrus. You realize he's going to want to know why, when he's on, we're not wearing a Winnebago red shirt with a white logo. Or
wait a minute, we do have. I did wear the Winnebago shirt.
You did wear the Winnebago shirt. You did.
The one that he sent to us.
Not the one that you can go out in public with,
right,
but you did wear. Yeah, exactly. All right, Whitney, thank you very much. A pleasure having you on the show, and we will see you down the road.
Definitely.
Thanks, everyone.
See you guys.
All right.
Have a great day.